at the German Marshall Fund, and he joins us now. Are these sanctions legitimate?
Well, first, let's address the question, who is responsible for the atrocities that we're witnessing every day since 2014, in fact, in Ukraine? And the answer is simple. This is Russia. So therefore, the sanctions that have been implemented, and especially after February 24th, have a very clear trigger, a very clear reason why they are being implemented by the Western world. And therefore, the appeal of the regional authorities of Russia or the federal authorities of Russia, including Vladimir Putin, to the humanitarian notion is nothing else but deception, the tactic of deception that very often Russians implement in order to justify their, the atrocities they do.
Well, what sort of rail traffic are we talking about going through Lithuania usually?
Well, clearly, if you look on the map of the railroad system, of course, Lithuania is a vital transit point for Russia to be able to commute between the mainland Russia and the remaining Kaliningrad exclave. And although Kaliningrad exclave is not that large, it has less than 2 million population there, still, it is by far the most heavily militarized pieces of land on the European continent. So therefore, the importance of Kaliningrad is twofold. On one hand, this is probably the last remaining footprint of the strategic depth once the Soviet Union and Moscow controlled on the European continent, because after all, this is the westernmost point of Russia. And second, of course, the proximity of Kaliningrad Oblast to Suwałki Gap, which is a tiny strip of land under 100 kilometers between Poland and Lithuania, which is a vital chain of supply, both of military and any other goods that exists within NATO and its eastern flank. So therefore, although Kaliningrad is rather small, but smallness in this regard can be deceptive again. And therefore, not in terms of scale, but rather in the point of location, Kaliningrad is a very important part of the European continent.
Well, and of course, it is the basis, isn't it, for the Baltic Fleet, or it's the port of the Baltic Fleet, Russia's Baltic Fleet. It's also described as a major industrial centre. What is it producing now?
Absolutely correct, and even more so when we look at the statement disseminated recently by the governor of Kaliningrad. He says that, and I quote, that as if blockade could emerge of Kaliningrad. But wait a second, if you look on the map, Kaliningrad Oblast shares borders not only with Poland and Lithuania that are NATO and EU members, but also with the rest of the Baltic Sea. And it has the same distance of sharing the border with the Baltic Sea as with the remaining two countries that I mentioned. And moreover, Kaliningrad Oblast has 3 unfreezing ports, and the port of Kaliningrad is one of the largest in the region too. So therefore, the high tone that we see in that statement, of course, is intended to appeal first and foremost to the minds of Europeans, general folks in Europe who are witnessing this and would question their own governments, realizing the sense of certain fatigue caused by also economic downturn that is now in Europe. And as we know perfectly well, Russia is very capable of being able to deploy different sorts of narratives, starting to question the legitimacy and the necessity of actions that the West undertakes. And I think here that we are witnessing one of the attempts to produce this, to spin this story in this way. And also important to stress that by far we haven't witnessed any official statement by the Lithuanian authorities on the matter.
Maksimas Milta, thank you very much indeed for joining us.